Though it has never been noticed, Vertanez is the first author to use the Edessa image in the context of a defense of icons, and he adds a significant detail not mentioned in earlier historical sources about the location of the icon. I quote him, "What would you iconoclasts say of the image of our Lord, which the pious King Abgar had painted directly of Christ himself, and which they say is now found in the great church of Edessa?" It's found in the great church. In the earlier Syriac source, the icon, as the private property of King Abgar, had been placed in his palace. But by Vertanez's time, it was now kept in the cathedral. The royal line of Edessa was snuffed out by Caracalla in 213 to 214. The point of Vertanez's treatise is not the permissibility of icons in general, but their use in church, which carried implications of acceptance and endorsement by the clergy. And this is what his iconoclast adversaries had specifically challenged. Vertanez clearly believed in the authenticity and antiquity of the Edessa icon, and in his mind, church practice justified its veneration as well as the veneration of subsequent icons. For Vertanez, King Abgar's icon of Christ is the primary and most authentic example of an icon, a painted wooden panel of a sacred subject. After the Edessa icon, Vertanez introduces one of the most important of Armenian icons, that of the cross with the human face upon it. That's what we have to call this image, the cross with the human face upon it. The text is very important and has never been explained properly or connected with this image. Pardon me. Excuse me. Vertanez tells us, "In the place of idols of wood, Christ has raised his cross in the center of the universe. And because men had grown accustomed to worshiping dead and inanimate images, he himself became a dead image. He died and gave up his spirit on the cross that men might learn to worship the wood of the cross and the human face upon it, and to obey the image of his divinity." End of quote from Vertanez. The very specific image to which Vertanez refers, the cross and the human face upon it, and he uses an unusual compound word, mardademen, has by luck survived on a stone capital in Vertanez's own Dvin. We don't know the exact circumstances of its excavation, unfortunately, but still we know it's right from Dvin, and certainly our author had seen the piece. Above a jeweled T-shaped cross, a medallion carries a youthful, cross-nimbed face of Christ. Leaves branch out from the base of the cross. The cross is the tree of life. And angels fly in from either side. And there's more a little around the corner. Notice this. We'll see more of this in a moment. The connection between the text and the image has not been observed, but the image of Christ's face upon his cross is very contemporary. It's just gaining circulation in the late 6th century in Palestine and in Egypt. Here I show a lead ampulla from the Holy Land with the bust of Christ sitting above the cross. Here it's a full cross. And the thieves on their crosses on either side. The introduction of Christ on his cross is a critical moment in the development of Christian art. Vertanez insists that while his adversaries, quote, worship the sign of the cross, you throw stones at the king. You adore the cross, but you revile the crucified Christ, as do the Manichaeans and the Marcionites. It suddenly became important to put Christ on the cross for its dogmatic implications. For Vertanez, the representation contained a pointed anti-Chalcedonian argument, I think, for he tells us that Christ on the cross is both dead and the image of the humanity, both the dead image of the humanity and the image of his living divinity. The Council of Chalcedon, the Armenians thought, as Professor Garsoyan remarked a few moments ago, so distinguished the natures of Christ as to separate them, and their union is a persistent theme in Armenian exegesis of the crucifixion, as I have traced in some detail in Armenian gospel iconography, both in the teaching of St. Gregory and in the Armenian version of the Tresagion hymn, which adds, "Who was crucified for us," to the Holy, Holy, Holy. Around the corner of this capitol, you see, turning this corner, I have another view of it here in color. You see, but this, by the way, is another place where the subject shows up in Egypt at the very same time. This is a sketch of a painting in Kelia. A bust of Christ now imposed on the center of the cross. So this is happening in many places in the Christian world, and one might even think of the inheritance of this motif in Byzantine art, the grand cross of San Apollinare in Classe, a jeweled cross with a medallion of Christ in the center, or the splendid example that Helen Evans has acquired for the Metropolitan Museum. Around the corner of the Capitol, a horseman approaches on the right, trampling a serpent or a dragon, and most likely there was a symmetrical horse on the other side where the Capitol is damaged. Here on the right is what it looks like as it turns the corner. You see the horseman, perhaps Theodore or George, spearing a creature down below. This makes the Capitol into a triptych. And triptychs are one of the most popular forms of early Christian icons on wood. There are many triptych panels in Sinai, and one pair actually shows the Cavalier saints, George and Theodore, spearing serpents and adversaries. We don't have the center panel that went with this pair of horsemen. But I would hypothesize that the center panel is the panel that we have in Dvin. We should put these two together.